finally here. Trump gods are shining bright. Golden future, a brand new light. Feast and dance, the deal is done. Trump gods are number one. Trump gods are shining bright. Golden future, a brand new light. Feast and dance, the deal is done. Trump gods are number one.
I mean, now it's gonna be in my head all day. It's just that. No, but seriously, here's a screenshot of that video that you just watched, and you see a little bit. You can go buy one in this Trump Gaza. So it's gonna be a collector's item apparently. I mean, this is this is something that Trump posted on his Truth Social, and this is just interesting. It's right in the middle, and it's gold. That's fascinating. But I want to talk about this among all the things. You've heard the lyrics, Trump Gaza is number one, Trump is here to set you free. But this is another image in that video that you just watched, and you just see a golden head. Now, going back to Daniel chapter 2, this is something that I talked about in one of the last videos that I did, but in Daniel chapter 2, Daniel has this dream, and he interprets the dream to Nebuchadnezzar. And Nebuchadnezzar is, Daniel is under the threat of death if he doesn't interpret a dream correctly. So he interprets the dream, and he defines an image. He tells him that he sees an image, that Nebuchadnezzar had this image. And Daniel goes on to describe the image's head, the chest, the arms, the belly, the thighs. And he describes what they are all made of, but they're all made of different material, but the image's head was of fine gold. Now, as you continue reading in Daniel chapter 2, Daniel gives the interpretation of the dream, and he says, "You, O king, are a king of kings." And now Nebuchadnezzar was a king of Babylon. That is important to understand, but he goes on and he says, "You, Nebuchadnezzar, are this head of gold." Now, when you think of the head of gold, I mean, there is a literal head of gold here. That is, it's definitely something to pay attention to. Now, in Daniel chapter 11, it says, "He, the Antichrist, shall plant the tents of his palace between the seas and the glorious holy mountain. Yet he shall come to his end, and no one will help him." Now, the place that it's referring to is going to be somewhere over in the Middle East, and Gaza seems like a likely candidate, because when you look at a map, over here of Israel, what you see is this little red area is Gaza. Now, I want you to imagine it not saying Gaza. I want you to imagine it says Trump Gaza. He's claiming land. He's getting land over there. And I want you to see how close it is to Jerusalem, because there's going to be a third temple that is going to be built in the future. And there is going to be, at some point, 3.5 years into the tribulation, the Antichrist is going to go into the temple, and he is going to create an image to himself, and that is going to be involving him and the false prophet. You can read about that in Revelation 13 if you would like to, but it's really, really fascinating to see that this little part of the world could sometime in the future belong to America. Now, I say belong in air quotes there because it's always God's land. This entire part over here, even coming down here and over here, all this is God's land. And so the Bible talks about dividing the land, and it's something that we should not do. And so starting to dabble in that kind of idea is it's very dangerous, and so we need to be sensitive to that, which is why it's so interesting, because going back to Genesis 12, where God has the Abrahamic covenant there's the covenant that God says, "I will bless those who bless you." He's talking to Abraham, talking to which represents the Jewish people, and he says, "I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse those who curse you." And so here, even though it seems like we are allies with Israel and we're helping them out, we need to be sensitive to the fact that whoever this Antichrist is going to be, I don't know who it's going to be, but whoever it's going to be is going to be a friend of Israel initially, because they are going to accept him. They are going to think that he is the Messiah for the first 3.5 years, and they're not going to understand that he tricked them until 3.5 years into the tribulation. Then he's going to basically go into the temple. He's going to, which talks about in Matthew chapter 24, where it says, "When you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, then he who is in Judea flee to the mountains." So people are going to see this actually take place, and when they see this Gentile, this Antichrist, go into the temple, they're going to be like, "Wait a second. second. You should not have done that. That is not where you belong. You have no right going in there. But that's what this Antichrist is going to do. And that is when the abomination of desolation is going to be erected. But this is really fascinating stuff because you're seeing it. And now Trump is almost provoking something by posting that on his social media. One of the things that's always kind of been interesting to me, or something that I've been trying to figure out, is in Revelation 6, when it talks about the Antichrist that comes on this white horse, it says he who sat on it had a bow and a crown was given to him, and he went out conquering and to conquer. So this person, this Antichrist, this future Antichrist, I think he's going to be a Gentile just because of the times of the Gentiles that Jesus mentions in Luke chapter 21. You see that there. But not only that, but you see the whole dream that Daniel saw in Daniel chapter 2 was of Gentile nations. And so Babylon is the head of gold. So Nebuchadnezzar is the head of gold, which is what we saw on that balloon in that image. Babylon is that head of gold. And so here in Revelation chapter 6, we see that the Antichrist is going out. He went out conquering and to conquer, meaning he was already in conquering mode, and then he continued to conquer. And so that's interesting, because what does that mean? And so, it could mean that it has implications to or political implications. So maybe he's going out conquering and to conquer politically, maybe. But it's really, really fascinating, because under the first Trump administration, there was no wars, but now, so he wasn't really conquering. So I don't know. It's really, really interesting when you start unpacking this stuff and trying to figure it out. But going back to the head of gold being Babylon, or representing Babylon in Daniel chapter 2, I think it's interesting. Let's talk about this for a second. So we know from Revelation chapter 18 that Babylon is going to fall, because here in Revelation chapter 18, that's what this whole chapter is talking about how Babylon is going to fall. Now, when you go back and you compare Babylon to Daniel chapter 2, in Daniel chapter 2, Daniel sees Nebuchadnezzar, and Nebuchadnezzar represents the head of gold. He represents Babylon. So Babylon in Daniel's dream in Daniel 2 was the head of gold. And so now you're seeing the head of gold start to surface again, which is indication of, or an indicator that the king of Babylon is surfacing. And so we don't know who the Antichrist is. We're not going to be here for when he is revealed. I believe in a pre-tribulation rapture. If you disagree, that's fine. But it's just really fascinating to see how all of this kind of stuff is coming together. But it's important to know how the story ends, because if you don't know how the story ends, then there can be discouraging kind of thoughts and a lot of fear that kind of sets in, and we are not called to that. So we need to avoid that as much as we possibly can. The way that we combat discouraging thoughts or depression or anxiety is by knowing the truth, because you and I are in a spiritual warfare, and it's not like somebody is physically going after you. It is somebody is spiritually going after you, and somebody is spiritually going after me as well. And so we need to arm ourselves with the whole armor of God, but we need to first identify that we are being lied to in many different arenas of life. But this abomination of desolation, who knows what it's going to be? There's going to be something that is going to be built, and it is going to be forced to worship. And this is fascinating, guys. This is, what a time to be alive. And I don't know, I've always said that I think the rapture is going to occur in my lifetime, but I could be wrong. Regardless, we need to be telling people about Jesus as much as we possibly can, regardless. If you agree with everything I said in this video, still need to be telling people about Jesus. The gospel is everything. If you disagree with everything in this video or agree with everything in this video, it doesn't matter. You and I, if you're a born-again believer, we are on the same team, and we need to be doing everything possible to glorify the Lord. Literally, that is everything. If you acknowledge that as truth, it is life-changing. You will live differently. You will love differently. These things are just going to be a natural byproduct if you acknowledge that. But we first need to acknowledge it. And once you do, then you will be a light. And that is what you are called to be.